the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred. SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least. These individuals were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement.
The Southern Poverty Law Center used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups.
It is one of the
What's going on, y'all? Eric Muldrow here with Code Red Conversations. As you can see, we got a pretty hot one today. This is what almost everybody is talking about. And I want to make sure that you guys get my take on this entire matter. What we're hearing, what the allegation is by the Department of Justice is that the SPLC, aka the Southern Poverty Law Center, was basically funding the very hate crimes or hate that they claim to fight. Of course, the SPLC has a different take on it. Their claim is that they had sources on the inside that were keeping them informed, that they were using for their reporting. But there's a grand jury indictment, which is, we're going to get into the details of why that's significant, that says otherwise. So let's jump into let's finish the rest, a little bit more of this video. Then we're going to talk about what exactly is a grand jury indictment, what makes it different from just a normal probable cause law enforcement arrest. And we will together read the entire documents, 14 pages, but they're pretty brief. And then we'll talk about the significance of the SPLC. They're labeling who they labeled as hate groups. And this is what really got me. Why I'm most passionate about this topic is that during my time when I was a police officer, actually when I was a corrections officer primarily, and I was assigned to a gang intelligence section at the Clark County Detention Center here in Las Vegas, we would do a lot of investigations and a lot of training and research on gang involvement, from prison gangs to street hate groups. And the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, was an entity that we used quite a bit. But now and I remember one guy, there was one officer, when I referenced the SPLC, he was like, I don't know how great of a resource they are. But I never really put 2 and 2 together until much later. But let's watch this video together and we'll continue our conversation on this matter here.
Country's most prominent civil rights organizations, now the Southern Poverty Law Center, facing an 11-count federal indictment, accused of funneling millions to the extremist groups that they claim to be fighting. It's very ironic for an organization which has labeled others as hate groups and put out a report criticizing Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk several months before he was killed last year. Fox News contributor and GW University law professor Jonathan Turley joins us now. Jonathan, I was shocked to learn all of this. It's very strange. They oppose these groups, yet they're giving money to them. Why would they do that?
Well, that's the allegation, which of course has to be proven in a court of law. I pulled up this clip because I actually thought that this attorney here actually made a strong case. I saw other people having this conversation. I watched the clip on ABC News and I think CBS News, but they were clearly very pro SPLC. And I think that he kind of talks about the issues that one of the issues that the DOJ will have, one of the areas that they might struggle in order to prove their case. But I still found it fairly balanced, especially hearing the attorney speak. Let me know what you guys think.
Yeah, Ainsley, you're absolutely right about that. The irony is also that it was the center that sought to seize assets from groups like the KKK. Now the U.S. government is trying to, through forfeiture, seize the assets of the center. And what the center is saying is that we did have confidential informants. They sound a lot like the FBI. They said, you know, we ran all of these confidential informants and they gave us evidence and we pass that evidence along to state and federal law enforcement. It's very rare to see a non-law enforcement organization conduct these types of clandestine operations. They're even accused of using some of these paid individuals to remove material from these headquarters. One of the things that I thought was striking about the indictment is that some of these extreme groups could conceivably sue the center for the removal of that type of material and for trespass.
Right. Yeah, we're showing.
That was one thing that I was thinking of. Was one of the thoughts that popped in my head was, to what extent can a non-police entity do this type of work? Now, I know you have Project Veritas and O'Keefe Media Group who do similar jobs. They do investigations and stuff like that, but are they paying informants? Are they doing all that? Because I know law enforcement can do that, but can a nonprofit organization do that? I believe they were nonprofit, but who receive donors? Is that a part of their job? I don't know. If anybody has any information on what nonprofits can do, please let me know. Post it in the comments here. I'd love to interact with you. But it just makes me wonder, honestly. But let's continue.
Showing examples. That first one, the 1 million to National Alliance affiliate neo-Nazi group. This is alleging that they paid $1 million to someone to break into their facilities and steal boxes of their documents. Another example is Charlottesville. The Southern Poverty Law Center accused of secretly paying an informant with donor funds. Donors are paying for this, who helped plan the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. This informant.
And the Unite the Right rally was something that the political left and their media allies, which is mostly all of them, used time and time again to attack Donald Trump during his first administration. Every time you turn around, it was they took the whole good people on both sides narrative and they completely spun it, and they had probably a large portion of our country believing the lie that Donald Trump had said that he was referring to white supremacists and the people who are counter protesting them as good people on both sides. Because in that very speech he gave, in that speech, not later on, in that speech, he made a distinction. He says, and I'm not talking about the white supremacists because they need to be condemned totally. I'm talking about the people who are protesting against the statues and the flags being brought down. So if what they're saying is true about the Southern Poverty Law Center, that the fact that they were paying these people and that what they did was illegal, that's huge. That's huge, because I'm going to share with you a clip here shortly of the influence that the SPLC had. And it was pretty huge. I mentioned just a moment ago, they were an entity that we use as law enforcement agencies, as Las Vegas Metro Police, the Clark County Detention Center. When I was doing gang investigations, we referred to them oftentimes. And I'm not saying that everything that they did was false. All of their reporting was bad. But when you're including groups who are overtly and overwhelmingly Christian, who hold to Christian values, who hold to a biblical view on marriage as a hate group, you got a political agenda. It's as simple as that.
Jonathan allegedly attended the rally, helped coordinate transportation for attendees, and was paid $270,000 between 2015 and 2023. So instead of dismantling it, they were helping to finance it. Here is the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, on with Laura last night.
That this investigation was opened during the Biden administration and then mysteriously closed. I really don't have any information about why it was closed. And then we started again last year, the FBI did, working with the U.S. Attorney in Alabama. And it's extraordinarily egregious. You just talked about it, but imagine a donor to the SPLC if they were told, by the way, we're going to give the money you're giving us to the Ku Klux Klan. Okay? Like in some cases over $1 million.
So why was the case mysteriously closed, Jonathan.
I think that's pretty
Yeah, Ainsley,
obvious.
I thought that was the most interesting part of the interview as well. You know, this center has been controversial for years. In addition to criticizing Turning Point after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the center has also targeted groups like Focus on the Family.
And even before the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which I will show you, I'll give you Charlie's response to that.
Because of their religious views and what they've said about LGBT values. So the group itself has sort of drifted from its original and legendary purpose in litigating against segregation and things of that kind. It has become a more blatantly political organization.
And isn't that the case with almost everybody? The NAACP, I think, had and I'm no expert on them, but I think at one point that they actually had a solid purpose. But nowadays they are nothing but a leftist political organization. Instead of promoting the rights of the inner city, the minority communities, especially like colored people, Hispanic, Black folks, they're more, or I wouldn't say more, but they're all into this whole LGBT push. They're 100% involved in all that. And I think it's a clear case. And I saw someone bring this up. Someone posted on it. The fact that when it comes down to the need or the claim for of racism, the claim far outshines the actual amount of racism that is actually prevalent and actually impacting people's lives. There's just no way of getting around it. The supply is much lower than the demand. The demand would make you believe that it is everywhere when it just isn't. Not to the extent to where it's truly impacting our everyday lives.
In my view. So that termination by the Biden administration was not surprising in the political sense, but it is concerning. Now, having said that, this is going to be a challenge for the administration.
This is the point I really wanted y'all to hear, where I thought that he gave a pretty fair take on all this. Because there are a lot of people out there who are pretty hyped up about this whole thing, who are pretty excited of the fact that there's actual indictment going against the SPLC. Many of us for years have understood that they were a problem, that they weren't a group who was really trying to find racism. They're become a political entity, a leftist political movement. A lot of people are excited about it, but the question is, what can they actually prove in a court of law? That's the big question.
Significant constitutional issues here. You know, the center is saying, look, we said we were going to attack these organizations. We did. We didn't go through our means that we were going to use, but donors knew that we were doing this by any means necessary. There's going to be serious free speech associational challenges that are raised. But as you note, Ansley, this is just an astonishing system that they created that looks like a mini FBI.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I just wanted to share that with y'all. So, okay, what's the significance of a grand jury? Let's just talk about that before we get into reading through the indictment, which we will. Because unlike other people who are just talking about it, I want to actually take y'all through it. It shouldn't take that long. Most of the pages don't have that much text. But I want to share with y'all why a grand jury indictment is significant as opposed to a regular probable cause case or regular police action.
In this video, we will discuss grand juries. A grand jury determines whether there is enough evidence to accuse or charge someone with a crime. But grand juries do not determine whether someone is guilty or innocent of the crime. The grand in grand jury means big. Federal grand juries are bigger than trial juries and usually have 16 to 23 members. You can think of a grand jury as a shield against unjust prosecution. Among other things, a grand jury is supposed to make sure that if there is no evidence, a person will not be accused of a crime.
And that's very significant alone. Because in a normal arrest, let's just say I'm out on the streets and I see and I'm arresting someone for a burglary charge. I get there, I gather my evidence. There might be some witness statements, there might be some camera footage or whatever. I might see the guy there climbing out of a window of a store with a hammer in his hand and a mask and a bunch of property from the store. I arrest him. That still has to be approved by my supervisor. Make sure I checked my boxes, did what I was supposed to do. And then it has to be sent off to the DA's office, the district attorney's office, where they review the case and they see whether, all the elements of each crime were met and maybe make some adjustments, or they may take away some charges. They may even add some charges. But the grand jury is almost like a mini hearing in and of itself. It's not meant to prove whether the person is guilty, but it's to demonstrate whether there's really strong evidence to prove that demonstrates that this individual did commit the crime.
For example, let's say there was a robbery. The police investigate the robbery and they find a fingerprint. And the fingerprint belongs to David. The prosecutor will show the fingerprint to the grand jury and say, we want to prosecute David based on this evidence. The grand jury has to determine whether there is enough evidence, probable cause, to accuse David of the robbery. Let's say the
quick point to make, just to define probable cause. Here in the state of Nevada, the definition was probable cause exists when the facts and circumstances known to the officer would warrant a prudent person to believe that a crime had been committed and that the accused had committed it. So it's like the information that I have when a average citizen, prudent person saw the evidence, it would demonstrate to them that a crime actually did take place and that the individual that we arrested is actually the perpetrator, is actually the one who committed the crime. So a grand jury is just another step in that process to demonstrate probable cause, the strength of the probable cause.
The grand jury decides that there is enough evidence to accuse David of the crime. We would say David has been indicted by the grand jury
He's not
on
guilty,
the charge of robbery.
but he's been indicted.
The head of the grand jury will sign a document called an indictment, which charges David with the robbery. Remember, though, at this point, David is still innocent.
Right.
But he has been accused of a crime.
I'll stop it right there. So that, I just wanted to offer that as another way to demonstrate the significance. You have a group of, I think they said anywhere from like 12 to 23, depending on the state, which just adds another layer of proof, so to speak, that there's information here to prove or show that the accused actually did commit a crime. So let's make this so where y'all can see this here. Let me know if you're having trouble seeing this. I'll make myself small. And we'll read through this bad boy. All right. Again, I appreciate y'all for joining me. I wish I could make this a little bigger, a little longer. Let's see if I can do something here. Never knew love like this. All right, let's go with that. Let's just go with that for now. Wish I can get rid of this taskbar up top, but maybe all we can do. Yeah, that's probably as good as we can get here. All right. Okay. The United States of America versus the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center. Grand jury charges. I'm just going to say SPLC, so I don't have to keep saying this throughout the entire video. The SPLC stated mission included the dismantling of white supremacy and confronting hate across the country. Just right off the top of my head, right off the bat, if it was me, just reading their so-called stated purpose, dismantling white supremacy. That is part of their stated goal. And I believe if you go to their website, you'll see that there. So you can pretty much bet your bottom dollar. You can almost guarantee that they will be making the claim that they were doing exactly what they said their stated purpose was. Including dismantling white supremacy and confronting hate across the country. However, unbeknownst to donors, some of their donated money was being used to fund the leaders and organizers of racist groups. And that whole thing, unbeknownst to donors, that's something that the DOJ is going to have to make very clear, including the KKK, the Aryan Nation, the National Alliance. The SPLC's paid informants, quote unquote field sources, as they referred to them, engaged in active promotion of racist groups. At the same time, the SPLC was denouncing the same groups on its website. The SPLC also had a field source who was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia. That's big. The field sources made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. And that's another thing that is going to be a big issue, because if they were a police entity and they were facilitating transportation or helping create documentation or keeping the website rolling, that could really be a big knock against them as far as them trying to prosecute. That could be entrapment, clearly. I don't know how it works with these guys, the SPLC, seeing as how they weren't a real law enforcement agency or entity, but I don't know how they're going to prove this. I'm really looking forward to following this case. Okay, where was that? Yeah, okay. That field source made racist postings under the supervision of SPLC and helped coordinate transportation, I read that, to the events for several attendees. In order to covertly pay its field sources, the SPLC opened bank accounts connected to a series of fictitious entities. The covert nature of the account allowed the SPLC to disguise the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the fraudulently obtained donated money to the SPLC paid donated money the SPLC paid the field sources. And I'm pretty sure that their argument, sorry, let me switch that back. I'm pretty sure that their argument is going to be something along the lines of, well, of course it had to be fraudulent, or not fraudulent. We had to disguise the information we're giving, the sources of money. We had to disguise that. We had to cover that up, because if the Unite the Right organization saw that the SPLC was actually donating funds, that would make them aware that they're being investigated. So you can almost guarantee that that's going to come up. I had a comment here that I wanted to read, y'all. What's up, Laura? If I had to go to the grand jury on a wrongful death in custody, it was a trial, and the GJ determined, what is that? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that. Can you help me out with that, Laura? That GJ determined that the family had no probable cause to continue the lawsuit, so it was dropped. Very good. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, but help me understand what that is. The grand jury, GJ, obviously. Duh, I'm drawing a blank. I'm reading about it. But see, yeah, it's meant, a grand jury is meant to protect the citizen, protect the person because they would say that there's not enough evidence. But here, so far, what we have, they're demonstrating that there's enough to continue on. Again, it's not a statement of guilt. It's just showing that there's enough probable cause to continue on in the case. Whoops. All right. The organization. At all times relevant to this indictment, the SPLC Inc. was a nonprofit tax-exempt organization headquartered in Montgomery, Alabama, which is located within the Middle District of Alabama. According to its website, the SPLC is a catalyst for racial justice in the South and beyond, working in partnership with communities to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people, which is garbage right there, because they're not, with the mere fact that they put groups like Turning Point USA and the Family Research Council, which, if that doesn't ring a bell, the FRC, Family Research Council, doesn't ring a bell in recent years regarding an incident that happened with them, stay tuned. It probably will. Number two, to carry out this mission, the SPLC relied in part on public and corporate donations. As the SPLC explained on its website, with your help, we're standing up for the most vulnerable people in society, those who have no other champion. We're exposing hate and injustice, fighting discrimination, and providing award-winning anti-bias material, free of charge, to schools across America. We never take legal fees from our clients, and we accept no government funding. Okay, so they accept no government funding. I think I might have said that they're a nonprofit and they receive federal government donations. So if I said that, I just want to clear that up. From what they're saying, they did not do any of that. Rather, we rely on the compassion and generosity of people like you. Number three, the SPLC website also explained to potential donors that, quote, your support powers our work to confront hate, stand up to justice, and defend our civil and human rights. From the courtroom to the classroom to communities across the country, you can help create a more just and inclusive future for all, unquote. These donations were used in part to fund various publications such as the Intelligence Report. And I'm pretty sure that's a report I got when I was working in the Intel section. The Hate Watch and the Intelligence Project Dispatch. Number four, the Intelligence Report was a magazine-like periodical published by the staff of the SPLC's Intelligence Project, and provided free of charge to law enforcement officials, journalists, scholars, and others. Quote unquote, Hate Watch was a blog operated by the SPLC that monitors and exposes activities of the hard right in the United States. Blog topics include reporting on hate crimes and events, hate groups, and individuals, and lawsuits related to these topics. By providing SPLC with an email address, a person could receive the latest update from Hate Watch. Number six. Again, if you just showed up, I appreciate you joining me. I'm going through the entire grand jury indictment the DOJ has against the SPLC, aka Southern Poverty Law Center. Number six, the Intelligence Project Dispatch was a monthly online publication issued by Hate Watch staff that monitors and exposes white supremacy and its impact on communities. All right, next page. The header at the top of the publication further explains to readers the SPLC works to dismantle white supremacy in public forums and online, expose hate and anti-democracy extremism, encounters disinformation and conspiracy theories with research and community resources. And these are just my thoughts, but just hearing the verbiage reeks of progressiveness, reeks of leftism completely. I don't know what y'all think. 7, the top banner of the SPLC website had a link for public donations. By clicking the donation button, potential donors were brought to a web page that explained how to donate money to the SPLC. This page also informed donors, with your support, the SPLC Action Fund will pursue a bold action agenda to confront our country's most urgent challenges. Together, we'll uplift progressive candidates, progressive, who uphold inclusive democratic values while investigating and exposing candidates using hate and extremism to gain power. And I think this wording right here that I just read in section 7 is going to be the area that the Department of Justice has to prove. They have to prove that. And if there's that, and if they can't, I don't know how strong this case will be ultimately. The SPLC's paid informant network, the F's, number 8. Starting in 1980, the SPLC began operating a covert network of informants who were either associated with violent extremist groups such as the KKK or had infiltrated violent extremist groups at the SPLC's direction. These informants were referred to by some individuals within the SPLC as the field sources, or the Fs. Number 9, between at least 2014 and 2023, the SPLC paid their Fs in a clandestine manner. Doing so hid the fact that while the SPLC received donation money under the auspices that the funds would be used to dismantle violent extremist groups, this donation money was instead being used in part by the SPLC to pay leaders and others within these same violent extremist groups. The money was then used for the benefits of the individual as well as the violent extremist groups. And if I'm telling you, that right there could be very, very damning to the SPLC. If they can demonstrate that this money that they were paying them was being used to facilitate or help these extremist groups, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem for them. Number 10, between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC secretly funneled more than $3 million in SPLC funds to Fs who were associated with various violent extremist groups. And remember, Fs are what they would call their field sources. So keep that in mind. Uh, 11, examples of Fs who were secretly paid by the SPLC included but are not limited to the following. A, F-37, field source number 37, I'm assuming, was a member of the online leadership chat group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia, and attended the event at the direction of the SPLC. F-37 made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. Between 2015 and 2023, the SPLC secretly paid F-37 more than $270,000. So you're talking about over an 8-year period. Wow. F9 was affiliated with the neo-Nazi organization, the National Alliance, and served as an F for the SPLC for more than 20 years. F9's activities included fundraising for the National Alliance. Between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC secretly paid F9 more than $1 million. In 2014, F9 entered the headquarters of a violent extremist group and stole 25 boxes of their documents. F9 coordinated payments from the copying of the material with a high-level SPLC employee who had knowledge the documents had been stolen. The original stolen material were returned to the violent extremist group in a second illegal entry by F9. Thereafter, the high-level SPLC employee utilized the documents in part as the basis for a story published on the SPLC's Hate Watch website and authored by the employee. Another F39, was blamed for the theft and was paid approximately $6,000 by the SPLC to falsely take responsibility for the theft. My goodness. I honestly don't know I don't know how this applies to the civilian world. I know for a fact that if this was law enforcement being accused of illegally obtaining evidence, there would be no argument to be had. But when it comes to the civilian world, there's just a lot of questions that I don't have personally. But I'm definitely curious as to and interested in finding out. See, F Unknown was the imperial wizard of the United Clans of America. Let's switch this up here. F Unknown was the imperial wizard of the United Clans of America. In an article published November 22nd, 2013, the SPLC described the group as a, quote, millennial reboot of what was once a serious domestic threat. In its prime, the United Clans of America was responsible for, among other things, the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, which resulted in the death of 4 little girls in 1963. And I always found it weird, personally, how the Klan would still be brought up sometimes nowadays. And back when I was doing the gang intel stuff, they were just never, and yes, we were in Las Vegas, we were in Nevada. So of course they're not going to have the same impact. But even when I moved to Arkansas, spent a couple of years in Arkansas from 2014 to 2016, I just think groups like that are just irrelevant, largely irrelevant nowadays. I don't think that, and not, I don't think, I'd be willing to put money down. I'm not even a betting man, but I'd be willing to put money down that these groups are largely irrelevant and have no significant power in our nation. None. I firmly believe that. All right, D. F-27 was reported. Let me switch it up here. Sorry, keep forgetting. F-27 was reported as an officer in the National Socialist Movement and the Aryan Nation affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club. Between 2014 and 2020, the SPLC secretly paid F-27 more than $300,000. These guys getting paid. That comes up to what? That's over 6 years. So $50,000 a year as an informant or whatever he was being used for. F-42 was a former chairman of the National Alliance. The SPLC website contained an extremist file webpage about F-42 from the SPLC solicited donations. Between 2016 and 2023, the SPLC secretly paid F-42 more than $140K. This overlapped the time period in which F-42 was featured on the SPLC's extremist files webpage. Interesting. And I would argue that they'll say, well, we had to keep them up there on the list so it wouldn't look suspicious. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here while we go through this to see how they might respond in order to in an attempt to see why cover their butts, do some CYA. F-30 led the National Socialist Party of America, was the former director of a faction of the Aryan Nations and a former member of the KKK. Very interesting. Because typically you'll hear people trying to say that socialism is a very right-wing, or no, they'll try to discount the connection with socialism and in Hitler's group, the United Socialist Party. They'll try to make a clear distinction, say we're not the racist ones, but when you start going in history, you're going to see that there's a lot of correlation between these groups. The SPLC website contained an extremist file webpage F-30 from which the SPLC solicited donations. Oh, I think I read this already. No, I think this is different. The SPLC website contained an extremist file webpage for F-30 from which the SPLC solicited donations. Between 2014 and 2016, the SPLC secretly paid F-30 more than $70,000 in 2 years, about 35, well, if you count 2014. So This overlapped the time period in which F30 was featured on the SPLC's extremist file webpage. Similar situation sounds like. G. F43 was the reported national president of American Front and a convicted federal felon for his participation in a cross burning. Between 2016 and 2019, the SPLC secretly paid F43 more than $19,000. Sound like he got the cheap end. H. F Unknown was a member of the KKK and married to an exalted cyclops of the KKK. F Unknown and their spouse were involved in litigation whereby the KKK applied to take part in the Adopt a Highway program. I remember that, if it's the same one. During the course of the litigation, known payments were traced from the SPLC to F Unknown, which exceeded $3,500. I wonder if they're going to try to make a correlation between the lawsuit and maybe money spent for their legal fees. Number 12, in addition to directly paying leaders and others associated with the same violent extremist groups that the SPLC sought donations ostensibly to quote unquote dismantle the SPLC, also used F's field sources to indirectly fund money to other violent extremist group leaders. And I'm telling you, that's going to be the part that needs to be proved. This includes the SPLC funneling more than $160K from a fictitious entity to F11, who then sent funds to various violent extremist group leaders, including the former Grand Wizard of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Man, I'm telling y'all, the more I read this stuff, I'm not going to say, when it comes to federal arrests and federal prosecutions in this day and age of these activist attorneys, I don't think there's no such thing as a slam dunk. None whatsoever. Anybody can get off nowadays if you come to the right judge. The SPLC's fictitious entities, 13, to secretly funnel donated money to the Fs, individuals at the SPLC, including a person who would become the chief financial officer and a person who would become the director of the intelligence project, employee number 2. So employee number 1 became the CFO, and number 2, director of intelligence of the intelligence project, among others, opened a series of bank accounts at Bank 1 and Bank 2 in the name of various fictitious entities, including but not limited to the following: Center Investigation Agency, Fox Photography, Northwest Technologies, Tech Writers Group, Rare Books Warehouse. 14, these fictitious entities were never incorporated, had no bona fide employees, and conducted no actual business. At all times relevant to this indictment, Bank 1 and 2 were insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Counts 1 through 6, wire fraud. The facts set out in paragraph 1 through 16 are fully incorporated in these counts. Beginning in or about 2014 and continuing through at least August 2023, in the Middle District of Alabama, the defendant, SPLC, devised and intended to devise a scheme and an artifice to defraud donors and attempt to do so and to obtain money and property belonging to donors by materially false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, promises, and omissions. Omissions is a good one because they did not tell them everything that they were planning on doing. That's a big one. Purpose of the scheme and artifice, if I'm saying that properly. 18. The objective of the scheme and artifice was to obtain money via donations through materially false representations, and omissions about what the donated funds would be used for. 19. To carry out the scheme and artifice, the SPLC explicitly sought donations under the auspices that donor money would be used to help dismantle violent extremist groups. And again, that's probably going to be what they hang their hat on, the SPLC. We were seeking to dismantle these groups, but they're also going to have to prove how was it that you planned on dismantling these groups when you were sending their individuals, these guys, money and funds and helping them coordinate and set up and travel. When you were helping them do all that, how can you say that you were trying to dismantle them? And it goes back to the question I asked earlier. Are they even able to do this as a non-law enforcement entity? In the SPLC solicitation for donations as outlined therein, donors were not told that some of the donated funds were to be used by the SPLC to pay high-level leaders of violent extremist groups and others. Nor were donors ever told that some of the donated funds were used for the benefits of violent extremist groups, or that some of the donated funds would be used in the commission of state and federal crime. And that, again, has to be proven. Wire communication, 20. On or about April 25th, 2023, in the Middle District of Alabama and elsewhere, the defendant, SPLC, Inc., for purposes of attempting to execute the scheme and artifice set out in these counts, did cause to be transmitted in interstate commerce by means of wire communication certain signs and signals. 21. Specifically, the SPLC caused interstate wire communication between Alabama and other states through the use of automated clearinghouse systems, ACH, which was utilized to transmit an ACH batch transfer from Bank 1 to various bank accounts utilized by the Fs. Specifically, $13,905 was caused to be transmitted by means of wire communication. In interstate commerce, the writing, signs, and signals described below for each count, each transmission constituting a separate count. All right, what we got here? All right, read this here. Count 1 on April 25th, 2023, on 4/25/2023, description, a wire transaction in the amount of $47.50 from SPLC account at Bank 1 to a First Citizens Bank account by F9. I'm going to kind of zip through this a bit. Count 2, 2023, $1,000 from the SPLC to Bank 1 to F11. Same date, transfer $1,200 at Bank 1 to F35. Count 4, wire transfer $3,090 to F37. Same date, $2,865 from SPLC to Bank 1 to F40. 4/25, same day, $1,000 from SPLC, Bank 1 to US Bank to F42. All in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1343. Count 7 through 10. Number 23, the facts set out in paragraph 1 through 16 are fully incorporated. Okay, about Alabama, SPLC did knowingly make false statements on applications to a federally insured bank in violation of Title 18. Overview. As described in paragraphs 14 and 15, individuals at the SPLC opened bank accounts for CIA, Fox Photography, Northwest, and Tech Writers and Bank 1 at Bank 1. Similarly, individuals at the SPLC opened a bank account for Rare Books at Bank 2. The purpose of opening these bank accounts for the fictitious entities was to be able to conduct financial transactions that made it appear as if the Fs were receiving money from the fictitious entities rather than receiving donated funds from the SPLC. After the accounts were opened, the SPLC, through employee 1, among others, executed sole proprietorship resolution of authority documented with Bank 1. These documents contain false and misleading information regarding the ownership and control of fictitious entities for which the bank accounts were opened. So basically lying about the purpose of the bank accounts on a federal document. Employee 1 and others signed these documents containing false and misleading statements for the benefits of the SPLC. 28. On or about the dates listed below, the following false or misleading statements were made to an FDIC financial institute. On this 12/20/2016, I, employee 1, certified that I am the sole owner of the above named proprietorship, engaged in business under the trade name. So, and then same date, someone made a similar, certified that I am the sole ownership of the above named proprietorship. So sole proprietorship resolution of authority. This was all at Bank One. Then we have another account. Basically, I, employee 1, certified that I am the sole proprietorship. So basically, have the same thing happen. I guess they must have where they signed. And then a similar thing under the trade name Northwest Technology. I'm not going to read all this. 29. In 2020, Bank One conducted an internal investigation into these accounts. Thereafter, an SPLC employee requested that Bank One close the accounts associated with the CIA, Fox Photography, Northwest Tech, and Tech Writers, and transfer the remaining balance in these accounts to Bank One. Account ending in 6050, held in the name of the SPLC. In response to Bank One's internal investigation on 9/9/21, the president and chief and CEO of SPLC, as well as the board chair, admitted the following in writing to Bank One. Pursuant to the discussion we had this week, please let this correspondence serve as confirmation that the accounts listed below were open for the benefit of SPLC operations and operated under the Center's authority. The following accounts are listed below. So they have CIA, Fox Photography, Northwest Technology, Tech Writer Group, Image Inc., J&J Electronics, Kelly's Marine. Additionally, this will confirm that the entity Rare Books Warehouse operates under Center authority as well. All in violation of Title 18. Again, all these things have to be proven. And I'm no expert per se, but, and again, these things have to be proven in a court of law. But it sounds like they may have a case here. And that's just based off of my experience and just what I'm seeing. There's something, again, these things have to be clearly articulated in court. All right, count 11, conspiracy to commit concealed money laundering. Almost done, y'all. I appreciate y'all being with me. But I really wanted to lay all this out because you have a lot of people just talking about what's going on. But I really wanted this, I wanted to hear this myself because I haven't read this through. I've read portions of it, but I wanted to read through the entire indictment so you and me, we all can come to these conversations having heard all of it, with the small exceptions of the few areas that I kind of hurried over, but they were pretty much redundant. All right, count 11, conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering. 32, the facts set out in paragraphs 1 through 16, as well as paragraphs 26 to 28, and 30 through 31 are fully incorporated in this count. 33, beginning on or about 2014 and continuing through at least August 2023 in the Middle District of Alabama, SPLC did knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with persons known and unknown to the grand jury to commit concealment money laundering in violation of Title 18. Objective of the conspiracy. It was the objective of this conspiracy to conduct financial transactions designed to conceal the true nature, source, ownership, and control of fraudulently obtained donated money the SPLC paid to their Fs. Matter and conspiracy. After receiving donated funds obtained via wire fraud scheme alleging counts 1 through 6, individuals at the SPLC transferred proceeds of the wire fraud scheme from the SPLC's operating account at Bank One to another bank. Thereafter, the funds in the CIA account at Bank One were transferred to accounts at Bank One in the following names. And those are the same names that they mentioned before: Fox Photography, National Northwest Tech, Tech Writers. These funds were transferred from these same groups' accounts to their informants. These financial transactions were designed to conceal the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the donated funds the SPLC was paying to the Fs. In addition, a portion of the proceeds, excuse me, I got a burp. Reading a lot, talking a lot. In addition, a portion of the proceeds that have been deposited into the CIA account. Again, this is some other name. This is not the Central Intelligence Agency. I forget what the term that they use, but this isn't the federal entity, the CIA. For those of you who just arrived here later in this video, deposited into the CIA account at Bank One was deposited into Rare Books account at Bank Two. The financial transaction from the CIA account to Rare Books account were denied to further conceal the true nature, source, ownership, and control of donated funds the SPLC was paying to the Fs. 38. The funds deposited in the Rare Books accounts at Bank 2 were then loaded onto pay cards issued to the Fs, who were supposedly employees of the fictitious entity. The Rare Books, the financial transaction moving funds from Rare Books accounts to F's pay cards, were designed to still further conceal the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the donated funds the SPLC were paying to the Fs. After the closure of these fictitious entity accounts, the following Bank One internal investigation, the SPLC altered their method of conducting financial transactions designed to conceal the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the donated funds from the SPLC was paying to the Fs. Very interesting. Specifically, from in or about August 20, 2020, and continuing in or about August 2023, the SPLC continued to utilize the ACH system to pay Fs who donated funds. These ACH payments were masked with monikers such as Rare Book 050 and IPR Con 050. These masked ACH transactions were designed to conceal the true nature, source, ownership, and control of the donated funds the SPLC was paying to the Fs. Again, all in violation of Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 1956H. Forfeiture allegation. The allegation contains in count 1 through 6 of the indictment are hereby alleged. I'll just skip that. Get to the next one here. Appreciate y'all for sticking with me so you can hear all this. Upon conviction of the offenses in violation of Title 18, U.S. Code, so on and so forth, counts 1 through 6, SPLC shall forfeit to the United States pursuant to Title 18 and Title 28, Section 981 and Title 28, U.S. Code, Section 246, any property, real or personal, which represents or is traceable to the gross receipts obtained, directly or indirectly, from the offenses in violation of Title 18. So they want all their receipts, basically, all their expenses, everything that they paid. They want all that. C, if any of the property described in this forfeiture allegation as a result of any act or omission of the defendant cannot be located upon the exercise of due diligence, has been transferred or sold to or deposited with a third party. 3, has been placed beyond jurisdiction of the court. 4, has been substantially diminished in value. 5, has been commingled with other property which cannot be divided without difficulty. The United States shall be entitled to forfeiture of substitute property pursuant to Title 21, so on and so forth. Forfeiture allegation 2. The alleged allegations, the allegation containing count 11 are hereby realleged and incorporated by reference to the purpose of alleging forfeitures pursuant to Title 18. I'll skip that. SPLC shall forfeit to the United States any property, real or personal, involved in such offense, or any property traceable to such property. C, if any other property described in this forfeiture allegation as a result of any act or omission of the defendant, 1, cannot be located, same thing, substantially diminished, beyond jurisdiction of the court, sold or deposited, transferred to a third party. I already read that in the previous account. All right. Yeah, and that's it, y'all. Man. So they're basically saying now they want all the evidence, everything proving or showing or related to the SPLC paying these guys. That's basically what they're saying. They want all that. All right, so we're done with that. And here's just a little bit more when it comes to the SPLC when we're talking about the impact that they had, because I really want to talk about that. And just think about it. These organizations, the SPLC had a huge impact on groups when it comes to donations, the Amazon, I forget what program, I'll play a video here shortly that discusses some of that. But their impact was so broad, y'all. And I mean, it was basically just wild. I can recall I was going to pull it up, but I forgot when I was prepping for the show. But I remember years ago there being a video with a whole bunch of celebrities encouraging people to donate to the SPLC. And here's just one of their posts from their website. This came out in May of 2022. Turning Point USA, a case study of the hard right in 2024. I'm going to just read a little bit of the heading. Several weeks after the 2024 presidential election, Charlie Kirk, founder and president of TPUSA, proudly embraced a white nationalist conspiracy theory while celebrating then President-elect Donald Trump's plan for mass deportation. Just look at the wording, y'all. Like, do I even have to even tell you how this could foment anger and violence? When you have people like Gavin Newsom and all these other Democrats out there talking about how we're seeing black and brown people being kidnapped on the street by masked people, referring to them as the Gestapo-like, and then you have people, idiots, or the useful idiots out there who trust their mainstream media. Why anybody in their right mind would do that in this day and age is beyond me. But they trust the alphabet networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, totally nuts. I don't trust anybody, any media outlet that blatantly, that blindly. But there are a lot of people that do. So they trust them and they see that. And so they automatically correlate that to racism, which is why you saw such a massive uptick in violence against these ICE agents and Border Patrol guys and Homeland Security agents at the height of Trump's mass deportation program, because you have wording like this. You had this type of wording going on, which was enough to spin those who are already, and I'm just going to call it what it is, mentally weak enough just to had their emotions stirred by just claims. You don't need any evidence. Claims distortion of truth, distortion of the facts, and you get people out there who are just ready to get wound up and be pissed off and do whatever it takes. Mindless drones willing to do whatever it takes. Laura put it perfectly. The puppets, they're being manipulated. And then when something bad happens, they feign ignorance. Oh, this wasn't our intention. Oh, violence is on both sides. This is the kind of garbage that we've been hearing time and time again. And there is no comparison when it comes to the violence on the political left and the political right. There's just no comparison between the two. We've had surveys. I've made videos talking about the surveys that were done and which side of the political aisle is more prone to violence. All you have to do is look at the last 10 years. You go back even further than that. You can look at the last 50 years, the political left, the groups like the Weather Underground and Black Panther Party, all these radical communist socialist organizations that are quick to at the drop of a hat are quick to want to jump up and grab a gun and hurt somebody and then try to justify it, saying that their rights were violated. The bombings that took place in the 60s and early 70s. Heck, I remember that as a kid, especially living in New Jersey. Hear about it all the time, the bombings in New York and in Philly and in New Jersey, all over the place, Chicago. It's insane. But you have people that aren't willing to do their own due diligence. They'll believe anything that they're told. And then you get this kind of crap. And then you get people hurt. Let me share this video also to make the case, because it was in May or so of 2025 when Turning Point USA accused, or when the SPLC accused Turning Point USA of being a extremist group or putting them on their extremist map. Check this out. Here's Charlie talking. And I don't typically say rest in peace, but rest in peace to Charlie.
Understand that they're literally putting high school chapters of ours on a hate group next to the KKK and next to neo-Nazi groups. And I mean, we can laugh this off. There's an element to this. Remember that there was a shooter that went to the Family Research Council years ago, inspired by the SPLC list. This is them trying to make us basically surrender at Turning Point USA. We're going to do the opposite, and our students are only going to lean in even more. But they can't debate us on our ideas. They cannot have dialogue. They cannot actually go onto the merits of why they are right or why we might be wrong. Instead, they must smear us with the age-old one-liner that you are a racist or that you are a hater. And they're finally realizing the power of Turning Point USA, which is why they put us on this
when you're
list.
effective, you're a threat.
Well, y'all, just that alone. When you're effective, you're a threat. And the initial post from the SPLC was May of 2025. A few months later, Charlie Kirk was dead. Now, I know there are a whole bunch of people out there believing this and that. I think when you really, truly examine the meat of the evidence, it points to one individual who is being accused of the murder of Charlie Kirk. And I think that's the most significant case that we currently have. Now, did he do it alone? Were there any outside actors acting beyond him? I don't know. I'm even open to that. But I think Tyler Robinson is the guy. And when you hear the words that he's alleged to have made, his statements, talking about Charlie needed that kind of hate, needs to be silenced. You can't negotiate with that type of hate. That fits to a T the type of violence and anger. Just remember, what was it? Was it in Dallas? The ICE facility that had a dude sniping from across the street with ICE written on the rounds, the magazine, or on the actual rounds that he didn't get to fire off. The rammings that took place with ICE agents. Charlie Kirk was on the Bill Maher show a few years ago talking about how he had to have security with him everywhere he went because of the amount of death threats. He's responsible in a large way of helping Donald Trump get put back into office. the very man that had multiple assassination attempts on his life. So common sense would tell you that, yeah, there's a good chance that people, these radical leftist hate groups out there, were the ones responsible for shooting Charlie. And they were fed by this kind of garbage from the SPLC. By this kind of garbage, the man held to a biblical worldview, had conservative Republican policies that he supported and promoted, and they killed him for it. And they celebrated this man's death. I'm telling you, groups like this, these organizations like this, they need to pay. They truly need to pay tremendously for the evil that they foment, they stir up.
After Charlie Kirk was
To
put
the
on their
weak-minded.
watch list, he got shot. After Charlie Kirk was put on their watch list, he got shot. Well, they'll say things like, oh, Trump's targeting us. No. You know who cracked the case? The banks. Internal audits noticed suspicious activity.
Wow. You're probably not going to hear that from your mainstream media outlets. And why wouldn't they want to report on that? Why would many mainstream media outlets, your ABCs, your CBS, your NBCs, why would they want to act as if why would they want to protect the SPLC? Just check out this video clip from the Ben Shapiro show. This might help you out a little bit.
So this brings us to the Southern Poverty Law Center. So you've probably heard of it, maybe you haven't. The Southern Poverty Law Center is one of the most powerful left-wing groups in America. It's a supposedly civil rights nonprofit that was originally founded in 1971 in Montgomery, Alabama. And originally, they built their reputation on using litigation and research, and I say research here because the research is pretty shoddy, to combat what they called white supremacists and other domestic extremist groups and advocate for marginalized communities. That was their stated purpose. And then over time, that turned into monitoring so-called extremist movements. They published a hate group list and a hate map, and they pushed programs on bias and intolerance. And this was used to mainline their intel into everything from media to education to law enforcement. The FBI, up until October 2025, was using inputs from the SPLC to determine the kinds of people to monitor. And even in the private sector, SPLC data was being used. So Amazon, under Jeff Bezos, said that it used SPLC data to decide who to exclude from its Amazon Smile charity program. So there's a program on Amazon where if you want to give a little bit of charity, when you buy a book, for example, if you're a charity and you want to get that money, you have to be made eligible via the Amazon Smile program. But Amazon would not accept you if you were on the SPLC list. PayPal was working with the SPLC to identify accounts to bar from its payment services.
Man, I'm telling y'all, I think we've forgotten, many of us, just how bad we had it before Trump. Let's just call it what it is. He reined in a lot of this wokeness. People were getting deplatformed. They were getting debanked left and right. There was an organization, I forget who it was, but I was wanting to donate to them. But in the process, they had gotten their name because I wanted to donate to them every time I made a purchase through the Amazon Smile program that Ben's talking about here. But I remember going back on there trying to see if they were still there and their name had been removed. Come to find out that it was because of this garbage. Wild stuff, y'all.
How prominent was the SPLC and is the SPLC?
Here's the point.
Well, since 2010, a search of the New York Times pulls up 711 instances where the SPLC is cited as an authority on hate or discrimination statistics. So
that's just one news outlet, y'all. One media entity, let alone ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC. So in order to maintain a semblance of credibility, you best believe that they're going to be defending the SPLC. Because if you come to find out that they were using information obtained fraudulently or were conspiring to foment the hate that they claimed to be fighting against, it's going to make them look bad. So don't just be Don't just assume that when these other media outlets are arguing against the claims made by the DOJ that they're being accurate.
They're like the go-to. The New York Times sees a Jussie Smollett story, and they call up somebody from the SPLC to talk about it. There's a Nick Fuentes story. They call the SPLC to talk about it. There's a Charlie Kirk story, as it turns out, and they call up the SPLC to talk about it. The New York Times, and this will become relevant in just one moment, by the way, repeatedly quoted the SPLC's data in its coverage of the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. That is the one where the media routinely claimed that President Trump said there were fine people on both sides, which was not what he actually said. They lied about that. But that Unite the Right rally has been the calling card for entire swaths of the left for a very, very long time. And the New York Times repeatedly quoted the SPLC in its coverage of that Unite the Right rally. And of course, they quoted the SPLC leadership to provide historical context for the rise of the alt-right. In fact, Google Gemini search of the New York Times, Washington Post, and USA Today shows that 20 to 25% of all analytical pieces on the Unite the Right rally referenced data or quoted directly from the SPLC. Why is this relevant? It turns out that some of the people funding the Unite the Right rally were allegedly the SPLC. So yesterday, the acting attorney general, Todd Blanche.
Yeah, so he just goes into more of what we read. And man, I'm telling y'all. And I also heard somewhere that from 2020, I believe, like in that around the George Floyd riots and everything associated with that. Or let's take it back even further. So from basically when Trump got into office, the Unite the Right rally and the arrests and violence that took place after that, all the way up to 2021, I believe, during the J6 fiasco, that the SPLC, their funding nearly tripled. The amount of donations, the amount of money. I think it went from like 50 million to like 140 million, somewhere along those lines. You could research it to double check the numbers. I may have my facts off a bit. But if you look at all that and find out that those numbers are true and accurate, that's a pretty crazy place to be. And it's proven that they were funding a lot of this garbage. That's not going to look good for them, y'all. Not at all. And as we continue to talk about these issues, there were a number of groups and individuals. Matt Walsh was put on the hate map, or as far as their hate watch or whatever they want to call it, people like that. As we showed you, TPUSA was put on their hate watch. And let me ask you something. Does this ring a bell at all? Does this face ring a bell to any of y'all? Floyd Lee Corkins II, does that name ring a bell? Well, if he doesn't, let me bring up why it's significant. Mr. Corkins was involved in the Family Research Council. He was the one who entered the Family Research Center, a Christian organization that advocates for Christian values. It advocates for marriage between a man and a woman, various other stances, speaks out against the LGBT push in our culture. A Christian organization. I pulled this up on Grok. The Family Research Council shooter refers to Floyd Lee Corkins II, who carried out a targeted attack on the FRC Family Research Center, Research Council's Washington, D.C. headquarters on August 15th in 2012. He entered the lobby armed with a loaded 9mm 6-hour pistol with about 100 rounds of ammo, a backpack, and 15 Chick-fil-A sandwiches. And we'll get into why that's relevant. Corkins shot unarmed security guard Leonardo Leo Johnson in the arm during a confrontation but was quickly subdued by Johnson, who wrestled the gun away and held him until police arrived. No one else was injured. Corkins had a handwritten list of other conservative organizations as potential follow-up targets. I'm going to play a little bit of his own confession. He claimed that he wanted to, because of at the time Chick-fil-A's support of or their opposition to same-sex marriage, he claimed that he wanted to smear the sandwiches in the face of the people he killed. But let's actually listen to him talk about this in his own words. Let's hear what this man had to say for himself. Why did he choose the FRC as a target for a domestic terror attack? The following is FBI footage of the interrogation of the shooter, Floyd Corkins.
Now, how did you, this building, this organization, how did you find it early? Did you look it up online, or how did you know about it?
Southern Poverty Law lists anti-gay groups. I found them online.
Okay.
A little bit of research on the website and stuff like that.
Okay.
Let me replay that, y'all. They ask him, how did you find this group?
Now, how did you, this building, this organization, how did you find it early? Did you look it up online, or how did you know about it?
Southern Poverty Law lists anti-gay groups. I found them online.
Okay.
A little bit of research on the website and stuff like that.
Okay.
Hmm. Corkins admitted his intentions. Let me back it up. Corkins admitted his intention to kill people in the building and then smear a Chick-fil-A sandwich in their face. And am I saying that the SPLC caused this individual to go in there and do what he did? No, I'm not saying that. But did they help? When you're targeting groups or individuals and calling them racist, haters, comparing them to Nazis and all this other foolishness, you can't act surprised when you get some insane idiots out there who go out there and act violently against them. Why would you be surprised over that? You shouldn't be. But again, they'll claim that they have nothing to do with it. Let's let the video continue. I think they say that they end up taking FRC off the list. No, they refuse to remove the FRC as a hate group. Insanity, y'all. I don't know where they stand now. I don't know if the Family Research Council is still on this so-called hate watch list. But I'm telling you, these people need to be held accountable. And this may be the start of it all. We'll see. We pray that justice will be served. That's my those are my thoughts. That's my prayer. That justice will be served, and that these organizations like this who hate on and vilify Christian or conservative-minded groups, that they'll just be brought down. They'll just be truly brought down because they do nothing but cause harm, and they're partly responsible for all the division in our nation right now. Let's look at a few of the comments here. This was a post earlier by Laura. They claimed they were giving money to undercover people to infuriate the racist organizations and try to dismantle the organization. Yeah, we'll see how that works out in court for them. Yep. Yeah, and I posted this a minute ago when Ben Shapiro referenced the hate map. Thank you, dear. Appreciate it. they're getting money funneled through political non-governmental organizations. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure if we looked around, if there was a deeper search done with other NGOs, you'll find all types of funding. How many times in recent years have we seen individual so-called hate crimes turn out to be a bunch of garbage, turn out to be a bunch of nonsense? And you take the Jussie Smollett whole case, the dude, hate crime, racism is so prevalent, you got to make it up. You got to invent it. You have to fake it. That's what pops into my head. And no one's saying that there is no racism. No one's saying that. At least I'm not. Of course there is. But is it the problem, the number one problem in minority communities? Not at all. Not at all. And this is from a dude who grew up in the 70s and 80s. And even in the early 90s, I saw some of it. But I definitely saw it in the 70s and 80s. I lived it. But to say that the United States is the same now as it was 40, 30, 40, 50 years ago is nonsense. That's my honest opinion. And that's not a denial of racism. It's just a denial of racism's impact today. The right judge along with the right attorney been going on forever. You remember in court services, attorneys would come in early and have closed door conversations about their cases before court. Absolutely. And you saw attorneys that had their judges who had their favorite attorneys, and they were more prone to want to do something to help them out. It is what it is, y'all. Like I said, we can only hope and pray that this thing turns out. And the SPLC, because regardless of whether this case actually goes through and the SPLC is held accountable, there's no denying that they are a evil political organization who wants to put this hate watch label or hate group label on anybody, on any group that they don't like and that has impact. Why do you think they went after Turning Point USA? Because they know people were actually listening to Charlie. Sickening. Anyway, man, I appreciate y'all for joining me. I read a lot. My voice is tired, but I think all this stuff needed to be heard, and this conversation needed to be had. So if you're just arriving late, go back and watch the full episode. And just sit back and listen. Maybe if you're on YouTube, maybe even put it on 1 1/4 speed or something like that, and you can listen to me read through the entire indictment, all 14 pages. Because there are a lot of people who see a headline and then they'll say, "Oh," because when I saw that YouTube video from ABC News, and they had some legal expert, and he was just carrying water for them. He had nothing. At no point did he even say that there could be some weight to this case. And so, which isn't shocking at all. But most people won't get past the headline. And there are many headlines out there saying, oh, the SPLC was just merely paying informants. But that you have to ask them, was that really what they're doing? And if so, were they able to do that legally? Is that what they're supposed to be doing? You have to ask these questions to see whether this case even has any legs to it. But they know most people won't do that. And they'll continue to divide us as a nation. But anyway, y'all, I appreciate y'all for joining me. Stay tuned. I'll see you next week, Lord willing. You'll probably see me even sooner than that. I may make some content. There's a lot of stuff going on. But as always, stay safe. God bless. And make sure you join the conversation. Take care.